Hello dear friends, today I am going to be making some storage containers just for my own use, and I'm going to be using glass bottles and some lovely napkins. Now I have a selection of different napkins here. I've got this lovely one that's got the eggs and the feathers, very nice and soft and gentle, and then I have this lovely one of a seaside town, which just reminds me of where I am now, because I do live in a seaside town that's got a pier and beach huts, and it's very reminiscent of that. And then I have this lovely one with just a selection of leaves. Looks quite like florist gum leaves to me. Those are nice and soft. And then I also have the butterflies, which I could use. So in two of these designs, for instance this one with the leaves and this one that has the seaside scene, I could use the whole napkin wrapped around, or I could go and either cut or tear out some of these images to put on my jars. But let me start at the beginning and I'll show you how to prepare your jar first. So the first thing you're wanting to do is to make sure you wash your jar and get as much of the glue and the glue and the labels off. You know what I mean, don't you? And then I'm going to be using some opaque acrylic. This is opaque white, and I quite like the Pevio because it actually has a really nice consistency. So I'm going to be putting it directly onto my brush, and I'm not going to paint it as such. I'm going to use a way of painting called stippling, where I'm dabbing it on. I find when you work on a smooth slippery surface like this, it's really hard to actually apply brush strokes and get them on evenly. But if you do 2 layers of the stippled effect, you will find that you actually get quite nice coverage. And for this napkin technique, we don't need it to be 100% covered. If you wanted to, you could use a spray, or you could maybe even use a chalk paint. Depends on what you've got in your stash. So I'm just going to carry on with this. So what you'll see here is that I've only applied one small little blob of paint onto here. I've used my fingers on the inside of the jar just to be able to hold it securely. I'm going to place this down on my cardboard and then just go over where my little fingerprint will be. And the ideal thing would be for you to actually leave that to dry completely and then do a second coat. Now, I painted a jar earlier and I've given it 2 coats. As you can see, it's not 100% even, but what the white paint does on here, or any light color paint, it will help you to just get the color of the napkin to be a little bit more vibrant. If you put it straight onto glass, it's going to actually look a little bit sort of washed out. And I've chosen to go with this leaf pattern here. I'm just going to remove the backing paper. You might have 1 or 2 layers of that. And I'm going to see how much of this I need. I think I'm probably only going to need half a napkin. Yes, that'll be plenty. So I'm just going to use a nice sharp pair of scissors to cut this in half. You could tear this if you wished to have a softer feel, but I'm probably going to tear off the excess in any case. Right. And because this serviette or the napkin has a little bit of a line here at the end, I am going to make that the bottom so that my design is going to lie this way. Now I'm going to start in the center of the napkin like that, and I'm going to be using my matte medium to stick this down. You could use Mod Podge if you wanted to, but I do find it's quite sticky when it dries, and I don't want to have that to deal with.
Lost in the shadows, all alone, silent tears falling, heart turned to stone, whispers of love echo in my mind, faded memories, a love left behind, searching for for solace in the depths of despair. Torn apart, emotions too much to bear. Aching heart, like a fragile glass. Shattered dreams, now only remnants of the past. I'll sing my sorrow in every note I play. Aching melodies carry me away. In the silence, my pain I release. Through the beauty of silence, I'll find my peace.
Worry about the base when we've got the napkin secured. Okay, so just make sure that you're covering up to the top here, or as near to the top as possible. And you can see that this is probably the way to go, rather than trying to put it matte medium on underneath, because it's not actually allowing the paint to lift. Right, so you're going to need to just maneuver your fingers here a little and get this nice and secure. I know when you are sewing, you will normally just cut into a gusset around an arm or a sleeve or some sort of curved surface so that the pieces will lie flat. You could do that if you wished, but I just feel because the napkin is so thin that it's probably not worthwhile doing that. I can just brush it all on. You could select a jar that had straighter edges if you wished, and then you wouldn't be dealing with this at the end. Right, so now I'm going to come in from the other side. I'll just put a little bit of glue there, and I don't want all of this napkin, so I'm going to just gently, I think I'm going to just tear it so that I get a sort of softer edge. Yeah, just tear it like that. And then I'm going to use my matte medium to brush it down. I will have a slightly deeper color where the overlap is. That's not going to worry me here. And I'm going to tie some nice twine around the neck of the bottle or the jar, depending on where you live in the world. It'll depend on what you call it. So that will just finish it off nicely. So what I'm looking for now is to be able to smooth out any thick areas of the matte medium. Make sure that my napkin is in contact with the glass all the way around. And then I'm going to just gently start to ease this piece that I have at the base over so that it goes underneath the jar. Where the papers overlap, you might find you need to put a little bit of matte medium between the layers, but that's okay. And you'll see that this is quite a quick process. It's a lovely way to decorate jars for any event that you might be having. You know, if you wanted just to put some flowers in, or maybe you're having a ladies' day and you need to put some pencils or markers out. Right, so that's ended up to be quite a nice neat finish at the bottom, and I can just cut out a little circle when that's dry and stick that on. Right, checking all the way around that I've got evenly coated matte medium. Just a bit of a wiggle and a jiggle to move it in your hands when you're working with one hand only. But you do want to make sure that this is done at this stage. You'll see when it's dry that any wrinkles that you might think are very obvious now will just vanish. And then the last thing that we would need to do if you're going to use this over and over is to actually just put a coat of sealant on. So you could use a deco varnish, you could use a spray varnish, or you could use a matte podge or a hard varnish, depending on what your function would be for this. So I'm going to set this aside and leave it to dry, and then when it's dry I will come back and show you how we're going to finish it off. just to wiggle it onto my little saucer. There we go.